which was mixed today as the U.S. takes aim at China's Huawei again, heating up trade tensions further. Mainland Chinese shares rose on the day, with the Shanghai Composite adding 0.58% to 2,955.71, and the Shenzhen Composite gaining 0.437% to 1,584.81. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index rose 0.31% as of its final hour of trade. The Nikkei 225 in Japan slipped 0.59% to close at 21,062.98, while the Topix declined 0.43% to finish its trading day at 1,537.55. Over in South Korea, the Kospi dropped to 1.20% to close at 2,067.69. Australia's ASX 200, on the other hand, rose 0.69% to close at 6,327.80 as almost all sectors advanced. And in the U.S. stock index, futures pointed to a mixed start to the trading day after President Donald Trump declared a national emergency over threats against American technology on Wednesday. At 5:50 a.m. Eastern Time, Dow futures were down 4 points, pointing to a slightly higher open of 32 points. Futures on the S&P 500 and Nasdaq indices were mixed. Trade tensions continue to weigh on investor sentiment. On Wednesday, the U.S. Department of Commerce announced the addition of Huawei Technologies and its affiliates to the Bureau of Industry and Security Entity List, making it more difficult for the Chinese telecom giants to conduct business with U.S. companies. On the data front, investors will be watching housing starts, weekly jobless figures, and a Philadelphia Fed business outlook at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Walmart and Manchester United are set to report their earnings before the bell. Baidu, Applied Materials, and Pinterest are set to report after the bell. While away from the equities there, let's look back here on the African continent. And Kenya has shortened the tenure of its new dual tranche Eurobond issue to 7 and 12 years from the 12 and 31-year issues it had previously planned. According to Refinitive's International Financing Review, the drawdown is due to changes in market conditions. The East African nation offered guidance of 7.25% for the 7-year bond and 8.25% for the 12-year tranche, while orders of $6 billion have so far been received. And Zimbabwe has announced the rebasing of its economy following the adoption of a new currency earlier this year. The central bank scrapped the peg between its quasi-currency bond note and electronic dollars against the US dollar in February and merged them into a single transitional currency called the RTG's dollar. The Southern African nation rebased its economy last October, boosting it by 40% to $25.8 billion. And the finance minister said the adoption of the RTG's dollar required another rebasing exercise. According to the finance minister, although the economy grew higher than expected in 2018, growth this year will be slowed by a drought and the cyclone that hit western regions. Rebasing the economy broadly means changing the reference points used to calculate the country's gross domestic product. And a new study by the International Finance Corporation says there are alternative ways for private sector companies to support the more than 70 million forcible displaced people globally other than humanitarian assistance. The study conducted by IFC in partnership with the Breedspan Group examined more than 170 private sector initiatives focused on refugees and host communities in Africa and the Middle East.
The private sector can use its assets to better support refugees and host communities to be self-sufficient. That's according to a new study by the International Finance Corporation. The report indicates that there are alternative ways for private sector companies to support the more than 70 million forcibly displaced people globally.
To a large extent, particularly when you go into protracted refugee situations where people have been there living in camps or similar areas for years and sometimes for decades, just relying on a purely humanitarian care and maintenance approach that provides goods and services to refugees and considers them as passive receivers is probably not a sustainable solution.
The study identifies an emerging growth of initiatives that lessons can be drawn from to drive success among refugee communities and the private sector.
Seeing refugees and host communities living in the vicinity of the camps or areas largely populated by refugees as elements of a supply chain. So they can either produce goods or services that are then being bought by some of the companies in the private sector.
The study also highlights ways to address the negative impacts of forcible displacement and uplift refugees. The report points to a startup that allows refugees in Jordan to pay for food with a simple eye scan, Innovation, which is providing jobs to migrants in Kenya, and Nyeri, which is helping tackle population at a major refugee camp in Rwanda.
When we speak about innovation, new initiatives, I think the type of financing that would be a little bit more flexible, much more similar to venture capital to a large extent, or financing for startups, is really a key element, and we see that as a key enabler.
The study also found that firms can scale up their impact on refugees and host communities through innovative financial tools and products, cross-sector partnerships, and better access to market information.
In Egypt, the government should start operating from a new capital being built in the desert east of Cairo in June 2020. The government says funding, logistical and technological challenges make future targets uncertain.
Egypt's government wants to start running the nation from a new capital in the desert from mid-2020. But the $58 billion project is struggling to raise funds and needs to overcome other challenges after investors pulled out. The project, launched in 2015 by Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, a year after he was first elected president, aims to offer a clean and efficient base for the government and finance ministry, as well as homes for at least 6.5 million people. But the project, which also seeks to lift an economy dented by political turmoil after 2011, lost a lead investor from the United Arab Emirates and is now being run by the Housing Ministry and the Army's Engineering Authority. There is strong interest from the political leadership in the project, and the large scale of the work faces some challenges, such as finding enough skilled labor to wire up the smart city and raising funds.
6000 كاميرا في المرحلة الأولى.
We have now completed perhaps over 50% of the project. When we're talking about the project, we're talking about the project with all its components. That is, buildings, roads, facilities, the smart system, all that is related to the project. Water, sewage, electricity, roads, natural gas. We need very extensive financing, and the state doesn't have money to give me.
A promotional video depicts a green city running on cashless systems for transport and other services that contrast with Cairo, much of whose elegant 19th and early 20th century architectural heart has fallen into disrepair. The new city, known for now as the new administrative capital, is eventually expected to cover about 700 square kilometers. The first phase, covering about 168 square kilometers, will have ministries, residential neighborhoods, a diplomatic quarter, and a financial district. A large mosque and cathedral, as well as a hotel and conference center, have already been built. However, a $20 billion deal for the second project phase agreed in 2016 with China Fortune Land Development Company Limited fell through over financial terms. The second and third phases had been postponed, he added. Despite setbacks, Egypt's general-turned-president has been keen to show off the project, taking visiting French President Emmanuel Macron on a helicopter tour of the site in January.
Take a break now, and when we come back, of course, we will cross over to the Nigerian Stock Exchange for update from my colleague there, Temple, and of course, we'll look into what's happening in London. To stay with us.